Welcome, everybody. Hello and welcome, wherever you are joining us from around the world. My name is Sean Moloney. I'm publisher of Ship Management International magazine, and I'm also CEO of Elaborate Communications. And it is my great pleasure to welcome you to the latest in our series of Ship Management International webinars. And I can see just from the data here that you're all starting to come into the room, and thank you very much for that. And we have a very timely and important discussion lined up for you today. Our subject is vessel buying in uncertainty, how market volatility is changing ship condition expectations. Now, this is a big topic and a hugely relevant one, because as we know, shipping is once again sitting right at the center of global events: politics, energy, security, trade disruption, sanctions, conflict, regulation, finance, insurance. You name it, shipping is involved. It's amazing. We go through all of these years of trying to promote shipping to the man on the street, and now he knows about it. It's in his front room every day. So today we will be looking at how these shifting market dynamics are influencing expectations around ship conditions and what that means for ship owners, ship managers, insurers, brokers, and the wider maritime community. We have an excellent panel with us today, and I know they're ready and willing to get stuck into the debate. I'll be asking them plenty of questions, but we also have very much we want to hear from you as well. Before we begin, few quick housekeeping points. The webinar is scheduled to last for 1 hour. We will do our best to keep the time, although we may run a few minutes over, a few minutes below, depending on the discussion. Now, at the bottom of your screen, you'll see a Q&A button, or there might be a button that says more. Click on that and you'll see the Q&A. There's also a chat facility to the left-hand side. Could I really encourage you to use a Q&A facility? It just means that I can focus in on that rather than having 2 or 3 screens on when I'm trying to moderate. And it also means you're not really sending personal messages to the panelists, so they can concentrate as well. But please send your questions in. We've already had one in already, actually, before the webinar started, which is excellent, because it's good to get your views as well. And I'll bring as many of them into the debate as I can do as we're going along. The webinar is being recorded. Once edited, it will be available on the Ship Management International website. So you and your colleagues will be able to watch and listen back at your convenience. We'll also promote it through our daily newsletter, SMI newsletter, which reaches 27,000 digital readers every day. And we will be covering the key themes editorially in the next issue of Ship Management International. So I think that covers the formalities. So without any further ado, let's meet the panelists. I'm going to go really from top left down to bottom right. So Jacobs, could I ask you just to introduce yourself, tell us a little bit about yourself, who you work for, but also what your views are, 1 or 2 minutes on your views on the subject at hand here, the whole issue of the uncertainty in the markets at the moment. But Jacobs, over to you first, sir.
Thank you, Sean, and thank you for inviting me to speak here today. I'm very excited, as you say, a very relevant topic. I'm the head of loss prevention at Britannia P&I. For those who may not know what Britannia P&I is, then it's your third-party liability. We are one of the 12 IT clubs, part of the international group of insurers who cover around 90% of our trade. Being head of loss prevention, that's been the technical department. So I myself is a ex-seafarer from Maersk, sailed as a dual officer. So I both have deck and engine ticket. After that, I've been ashore working in port state control, ship management, and various other stuff before I ended up here in P&I 8 years ago at Britannia, 5 years in Singapore, and now based in London. Bit of myself. On the topic, yeah, as you said, it's very relevant. Obviously, what defines shipping is we always been in a volatile market. You know, when one thing goes up, other thing goes down. When the containers are good, the tankers are bad, etc. So that has always been the environment in which we have traded. And, shipping has always been very resilient in order to come to this. But what is quite unique now, I should say, is obviously all the geopolitical stuff coming on top. I think it's a unprecedented time, at least in my lifetime. There's so much uncertainty. We seem to go from one thing to another: Ukraine, Middle East, Iran, etc. And then there's also the energy thing on top, which is maybe more on the regulatory uncertainty. Obviously, last year there was big hope of getting an international framework from IMO on what kind of decarbonisation measure will come in the future. That didn't happen. Personally, I think that's something we need, because that have a huge influence on ships as we see them today. Because what can ship owners expect? Would you go out and invest a lot of money in new builds if you don't know in 5 years' time will they be obsolete? No, probably not. So that may be that we see more and more older ships being on the market, and obviously there'll be other expectations from that as well. The older a ship gets, the more maintenance it requires. Personally, what we see here in Britannia is obviously that the condition of the ships has been good. We see more good ships in our survey program, which of course is very, very positive. But that may be also an indication of maybe more older ships coming in, and obviously when certain markets are good, there's no need to scrap ships. You'll keep them in because you could get high charter rates for them as well. So there's a lot of impacts now, both from, I say, geopolitical, and I think the energy uncertainty is the biggest impacts right now on the ship expectations.
Yeah, of course. Thank you very much indeed for those comments. I mean, I think if that's going to be the start of the debate, we're going to be talking about 2 to 3 hours. I think it's excellent. So thank you very much. And we'll come back on some of the points there that you've raised, as well as many others. Can I come on to Nick Owens from Idwal? And Nick, thank you first of all for helping to put the webinar together today with your team. So appreciate your thoughts on that and your help on that. Could you just introduce yourself and tell us a little bit about Idwal, but also your views on the as a can.
Yeah, thank you, Sean. Good morning, everybody. Great to be here. My name's Nick Owens. I'm the CEO of Idwal. Idwal is predominantly a survey organization, so we're inspecting vessels on a variety of markets. That's often in transactional environments, so S&P, ship financing environments. We're doing quite a lot of work directly with ship owners on condition inspection programs, so consistently monitoring the condition of ships on behalf of owners, managers, and basically for any other interested parties who have a sort of vested interest in the ship, its condition, its performance, its risk, etc. It's kind of, that's where we operate. We operate globally across all segments. So we see dry, tanker, container, offshore, etc. And we see, a wide range, I think, of situations that we see across the shipping spectrum. Around about 3,500 to 4,000 vessels that we survey every year. So we've got a good view on the market. We've got a good view on what good looks like, and we've got a good view on what bad looks like. I can only really echo the comments from Jacobs in terms of volatility, the market. It's unprecedented times, I would agree. It's certainly, in shipping, we're no stranger to that volatility. And I think that's something that we've become very, very accustomed to in recent years, volatile markets and how to navigate those volatile markets. Actually, shipping is extremely resilient when it comes to that volatility. And, I think from our perspective, the most important thing here for us is that we advocate and we maintain, that keeping ships in a good condition at all times, being consistent with that, being transparent with that, and optimizing that, and being as structured and as thorough with that as possible is something that we really kind of push into the market. And I think that really helps in volatile markets. I think condition is more and more an enabler, perhaps. It's kind of a commercial leverage opportunity. And it's not just a boring technical issue anymore, I don't think. So it's something that we feel really close to, and really eager to push into the market. But it's great to be here, and I look forward to a good debate.
Brilliant. Thank you very much, Nick. Thanks for your comments there. Keyur, I'm going to come on to Keyur Dave. Thank you very much for coming along today, and good to see you, CFO from Wirana Shipping. Could I again ask you just to introduce yourself, tell us a little bit about Wirana, but also your views on the point under discussion.
Well, hi everybody. I'm Keyur Dave. I'm the CFO at Wirana. Wirana, as you know, is the oldest cash buyer of ships that go for recycling in the world. We've been around now. Wirana is 43 years old. So we've been in recycling for very long. And we are a sort of one-stop shop for the ship owners' needs to recycle. So we're in the Guinness Book of World Records twice, being the only company in the Guinness Book for having purchased the largest vessels ever purchased for scrap purposefully. And those were, of course, ULCCs. And at the same time, we have done maybe 500-600 tonners as well. So for for Wirana, size doesn't matter, location doesn't matter. We have picked up ships in Australia, and on the other side, we have picked up ships in US and Argentina, Brazil as well. So location also doesn't matter, size also doesn't matter. We have done very large deal sizes, so financing strength is also there. We have a good in-house operational team. So in short, and whoever needs specialized green recycling, we are there to help those sellers and recyclers to complete the recycling in an environmentally friendly way, depending on the needs of the sellers, whether it is HKC, whether it is EU, or some are even EU++. So they are even stricter standards. So we help them do that. And we've done all types of ships as well. Conventional, tanker, bulker, container, LPG, LNG, FPSO, FSO, fish factory, pure car carriers, ro-ros, you name it. Anything that floats, we've done. Rigs, support vessels and everything. So it's a very interesting time in shipping, and it's a very volatile time. Whatever I say, it will be just a rewinding of the tape that Jacobs mentioned and even Nick mentioned. We're going to say the same things quite often in this 1 hour. Having said all that, this makes recyclers and cash buyers' position different because we don't see too many ships coming for scrap or for recycling. So I have all the time in the world to attend so many webinars.
Okay, brilliant, Keyur. And I'm going to issue a very small apology to Jakob because we've got you down as Jakob, isn't it? As Jakob, you're singular and unique rather than plural there, Jakob. So we know that now moving forward. If I can now come on to Morten. Hi, Morten. How are you? And welcome from probably sunny or snowy Oslo or whatever it is over there. But please, floor is yours for a couple of minutes on the same condition.
Yeah. No, thank you very much for inviting me, Sean. And I'm probably one of the few who's experienced also volatility in the 1970s, starting as a shipbroker at Plato in 1972 and following through 73 when everything came down big time. And we could walk, barefoot basically on tankers along the fjords in Norway for the next 5 or 10 years. Volatility was the name of the game then. And it was awful to see all these new buildings coming out of the yards, straight into layup, etc. Today, very different. The rates we saw in 72 was similar, literally, to that of what we see today for the VLCCs. And today, the difference is, of course, that this market seemed to last longer and be able to pay for some of the new buildings coming out. Very different from the early 70s. All that being said, I have been working in New York, Hong Kong, and London as a shipbroker all my life, and ended up in Norway about 35 years ago, and have been here ever since, and will continue to work as a shipbroker as long as I have some clients who are prepared to use me, and as it happens, some of them are, and it's very, very good. So I keep in shape, so to speak, with regard to shipbroking. when it comes to the present market, it's very interesting, very demanding, and it is not easy for owners to go ahead and to buy ships, contract ships, etc., based on the present price levels, because we all know this is coming down at some stage. And therefore, the quality of the ships, the quality of the management, and the quality of your counterpart, albeit, charter, banks, whatever, are becoming more and more important. And I think that is going to be the biggest challenge for ship owners and buyers today in today's market, is to find counterparts who are going to be able to maintain the quality of their assets.
Okay, well, that's a good opener there, Morten, and we'll be touching on that and many other points as we have the conversation continues. Just to say to the delegates who've come in, don't forget Q&A down the bottom. Send in your questions. We've already had a couple. One delegate said there's a little bit of an echo. It's okay this side. We're all fine this side. Maybe just slightly adjust your own sort of sound side on your own computer there, but it should be fine. I'm going to ask a general question for everybody, and then we'll have a little bit of a free-for-all, and then we'll start that debate. Really, to set the scene, market volatility is changing how vessels are assessed, valued, and scrutinized. From your perspective, what has changed most in the way stakeholders look at vessel condition, risk, or asset confidence? Nick, let me come to you first, and then I'll go to Jakob, Keyur, and then also to Morten, and then we'll get moving on it.
Yeah, sure. Thanks. I agree with Morten. I think you get these cycles shipping, right? And I think one of the most important things is that we should kind of behave the same through those cycles, right? And I think that's one of the most important things for us. It's that consistency, right? And being able to be a really strong counterpart in the market, irrespective of whether you're making hay while the sun shines on your rates. I think it's super important that one maintains that commercial confidence, that kind of discipline on condition, that sort of technical transparency and visibility, and that we are not sort of deferring maintenance and not giving ourselves issues and problems down the line, being that credible counterparty in the market that can be trusted both when markets are high and when markets are low. So I think what's changing, I think transparency is certainly changing. I think that the capability, the visibility, the technological tools, the access to to resources such as the resources that we provide in the marketplace, there is no reason or no excuse, I don't think, for condition risk management to be held in high regard by all operators or all owners in the marketplace. And I think, thankfully, I think we see that more so. I think we see that more these days. I think people are more prepared to be transparent than perhaps they were maybe 5 years, 10 years ago, perhaps. And I think that's because they realize that the commercial leverage that you can get from being a high quality operator, known for keeping ships in good condition, being a strong counterparty. And I think that matters across financing. I think that matters to insurance markets. I think that matters to charterers. I think it matters to financiers. I think it matters across the board.
And Nick, are you seeing a sort of widening gap between how vessels are perceived commercially and what inspections or data actually reveal about their actual condition? Is there a widening gap there?
Yes, I think, Sean. I think we see it both ways, to be honest. So I think, you've got vessels that can look quite attractive on paper because of their earnings or timing in the market or scarcity or whatever the factors are. And sometimes that technical reality can show, can kind of tell a bit of a different story, right? So, we see deferred maintenance and we see things that are hidden by utilization. And I think, until you look consistently, you don't know and should not take for granted. But equally, we see ships in, low ends of the market. I think older tonnage, as we see now as well, as Jakob mentioned. There's definitely a lean towards older tonnage. That we have the oldest fleet on the water today than we've had, I think, ever. So we are, but equally, within that, you can see good ships, right? Within that, and old ship doesn't necessarily equal bad ship. New ship doesn't necessarily equal good ship. Again, it matters, and I think the point here is that we should check, and we should do that consistently.
I mean, Jakob, let me bring you in on this, and certainly as an insurer, you want to make sure that the vessels that you're insuring are up to standard and their quality and what have you. Just on that general question there, what has changed in the way that stakeholders look at vessel condition and risk or asset confidence? What was your sort of views on that?
Well, I think one of the biggest changes I've seen in recent years is who are the stakeholders. What was a ship owner 20 years ago is very different from today. Back then, ship owners were very traditional. They own ships, they had technical management in-house, etc. Today, a ship owner can be an investment company who has absolutely no, I don't want to offend anyone, but obviously have less knowledge maybe of ships. They bought something and they are there to make money off them. So all technical management is left to a third-party manager, and that can work absolutely fine. But obviously, the third-party manager also have to make sure that the owner have an understanding what kind of resources do you need to keep a well-maintained ship, and why is it important to keep well-maintained? Because the other part, they only bought it for commercial relationship. They don't have any, really understanding of the technical part. They don't know how much it's going to cost. So obviously, there's just been quite recent events that showed that not maintaining your ship can have huge consequences for the management as well, which a recent case just showed. So I think the stakeholders, the kind of traditional ship owners, are still there. I think they always had a good understanding, but the other ones is where I think sometimes maybe the gap can happen, and that's where obviously they need to work closely together. The managers need to be strong and not just be also focused on credit, because as it was said here, then obviously it's their reputation that goes down. If they perform poorly, the ship is their DOC, POC performance, it's them who might be held liable for it as well. So they need to obviously explain to the owners and say, why is it I need these kind of money? And, say running a ship is not like just having a car. There's so many aspects to it as well that you need to bring into it. So I think that is where we sometimes have seen some of the gaps. And obviously, there's more old ships on the market now, secondhand ships going around. And obviously, that puts more pressure on maintenance as well, like with all other things as well. So I definitely think that's something where we need to see more of that. But commercially, there's more pressure also from it. There's more, obviously, within the tanker industry, you had vettings for years. You have RightShip and other ones in the bulk carrier as well. So there are more of these kind of vetting regimes coming. And whether you are a fan or not, then you can see in the tanker industry that definitely heighten the levels significantly when it comes to those. Personally, when we get tankers on risk, it's seldom they have any bigger ones because they are well maintained. They need to be in order to operate for the oil majors. You start to see more of that in the container and bulk as well. And I think that's just a trend we're going to see. There will be more and more pressure because nobody wants to have their name in the paper with a ship that oil pollutes somewhere or goes on fire. There's sustainability and ESG requirements. Ship recycling needs to be done in a green way. There's so much focus on bad publicity, and today's media controlled world, a little thing can easily be blown up easily. And for some reason, obviously, shipping, because it's maybe distant for a lot of people, is seen as a very pollutant, maybe a bit dirty kind of thing, because also people will call Exxon Valdez and all these, which polluted. So we, for some reason, very unfairly sometimes maybe have a bad reputation, which I don't think is very fair, because we do transport 90% of the world's trade and only have 3% emissions. So I think that's a really success story. But that's just not how people always perceive shipping. So, bad publicity can easily come and spread, and it's very, very difficult to get back from it again. So that's where the focus also needs to be. there needs to be a higher level. But that costs money and resources, and not always, people understand that, especially if you're not a traditional ship owner, you're more an investment company. But that's where we all have jobs to do to try to explain why it is that it is, especially from the ship manager's part.
Jakob, from a P&I loss prevention perspective, when you've got that market volatility, how does that translate into operational insurance risk? And I mean, we had a couple of 2 or 3 weeks ago, 2 VLCCs booked for $700,000 a day into the Gulf. Charterers, managers are very cautious when charterers are saying, no, come on, we need to get through the Red Sea, even though they're attached from the Houthis. You're getting pressure from the charterers, you're getting pressure from the owners as well, wanting to pick up on the strong market. How do you as an insurer deal with that type of situation? What's the sort of viewpoint there?
Well, of course, Iran was very clear in the start you couldn't get any war insurance, so obviously that stopped it. But obviously, insurance basically is putting money on a risk. So obviously, these kind of things the insurance premium will go up highly, and that of course keeps people away. But from my stool as loss prevention, one thing is the operational premium. I'll leave that for our underwriting and them to pay. I'm more also concerned about the crew on board, of course. It's also taking into account as well. So, it's very important, and hopefully that the reason why it's expensive is because we see it as risky, and that's what should be taken into account. And risky towards sometimes people forget there's also crew on board these ships. Have they been asked whether they want to go through the Strait of Hormuz? Maybe, but that's where obviously risk and pricing goes hand in hand.
But you got 20,000 seafarers stuck in the Middle East Gulf at the moment. I mean, there are rumors going around that food is running out and water's running out, but I'm hearing positive comments from the Middle East saying that's not necessarily the case. But the ship suppliers are struggling down there as well. But it as you rightly say, you've got to bring in the crew on that side. Keyur, let me bring you in from an asset and market perspective. How does volatility affect the way buyers, sellers, and cash buyers assess vessel value and residual risk? What's your thoughts on that?
Well, on the recycling front, there's so much lack of tonnage. So if you look at a recycling yard, they are saying just let anything come, but let something come. Quality and all that is later on, but at least something comes to my yard. I have some business to do. So lack of tonnage is a major problem that is being faced, and due to this, the ship recyclers are having very little option. They don't have the luxury of saying that it should be this condition and that condition. But of course, it has to be more or less as the vessel is described. But in such situations, too much discrepancies will be like raised unnecessarily. And also in India, there is this thing that sanctioned tonnages are also being sent for recycling. So, which would not have been the case some time ago. And if that was not the case, maybe the recyclers would be viewing things differently, because the sanctioned tonnages that end up on the beaches, they are procured at quite a bit of discount to the normal ships. Of course, ships or shipyards that are certified by HKC auditors like Class NK or Lloyd's or whoever, they would not touch all those ships, because then they would lose their certifications and all. Although it might be tempting for some people, but more than 100 yards are certified. But there are still some yards that are not certified, and they are doing what they are doing. Long
So
story
what's
short,
going to happen with the shadow fleet? Because there's something like 800 vessels or something that are in the shadow fleet out there.
we have been saying for the past few years that the flood is coming, the flood is coming, for so many ships that are supposed to be recycled. First, the war started, and a lot of ships started going into the dark fleet. And then we had the Houthi problem, where the ships needed to be rerouted. They had to go through the Cape of Good Hope and all that. So the voyage times increased, the demand for ships increased, the ton mile demand increased. And because of that, again, it was prolonged. They're going for recycling. And then again, this Iran-US war is also prolonging those things. It is very volatile now. So many ships are stuck there. So many ships are having to go to US and all that. So the moment the war stops, we feel that there will be quite a bit of ships that will end up. And as far as they are not sanctioned by US or by OFAC or such authorities, they are perfectly fine to be received and recycled either in India, Pakistan, or Bangladesh, or whichever country takes them. So what we expect is that there has to be an end to the prolonging of the recycling flood. It has to happen, but we have been proven wrong so many times in the past couple of or 2-3 years that we have now stopped saying that the flood is coming. But it has to come eventually.
Okay, Keyur, thank you very much indeed. I'm coming on to Morten. Morten, thank you very much for your patience. You've done very well sitting there, listening to everybody else. Just really getting your comments on what you've heard so far, but also bringing in how the current market conditions are shaping expectations about vessel quality, pricing, and buyer confidence. Is it down to that? Is it down to the market? What are your thoughts on that?
Well, first of all, I think, Keyur, you will have to wait until the prices are coming down, because at the moment, even the bad ships are earning good money and they are not going to come to your shipyard. And that's been the case every time the market's going up. There will be a draft. There won't be ships coming to recycling. I think Jacob touched on a very important issue, and that is the distance between the money and the manager. In the old days, the money and the manager had the same purse, and they were, using the same money coming out of the same pocket. To some extent, that's the case still, because you have to pay the manager, but you don't have the same control. That being said, I think many of the large management companies today are doing a much better job than many of the independent ship owners used to do, case by case in the past. The shadow fleet, or the dark fleet, is one which is very interesting. There's about 120 ships floating around, operating at the moment, and they are sanctioned. And they will not be scrapped until they are, the sanctions are lifted. Because if you buy a ship like that, you will be sanctioned as a party. And those ships are very, very poor condition. They will just have to, they will have to be offloaded somewhere when that sanction situation stops. But unfortunately for the world, and in this general situation, volatility and wars have brought very good shipping markets around every time. And same is the case today, unfortunately. So the only good thing about this is that the owners will have money enough to spend and maintain their ships in a good condition. In poor markets, when the earnings of a Capesize was $1,800 a day, you didn't put a lot of money into the ship. Whereas when it's $50,000 a day, you can afford to do good maintenance, upkeep, paint, etc., and overhauling, and go through the 20-year cycle without a problem. And that was not the case when the earnings were poor. So, albeit that we shouldn't benefit from a very bad situation in the world, shipping is making money at the moment, and that is going back into the ships. And quality of ships will continue to be one of the most important issues when you buy them. And I think most of the people on this panel can sign that quality is always going to be one of the most important issues.
But when you've got a high market, as you're talking about at the moment, Morten, people just want to buy the ship. I mean, that's the key thing. I need that ship because I have trading requirements and what have you. To what extent does the condition of the vessel come into the discussion?
It does, but you can buy gold too expensive, as we say. And people are pushing prices up now to levels which has never been seen before. And when you're talking that, VLCC spot or resale is now being sold at 40-50% premium to new building values. you will need to make sure that you get a good cover for a period of time. Otherwise, we're going to see the same thing. I mean, make no mistake, we will see this market come down very strongly in 4 or 5 years' time. And, there's not going to be a war going on forever and ever, fortunately. And it will stop both in Ukraine, Iran, etc., etc. And then things will hopefully be back to normal. And then new buildings are coming out of shipyards like it's going out of style. And, you, Keyur, will have more ships coming to your shipyard again.
Nick, let me bring you in again, just really on maybe your comments on what Morten's saying there. But also looking at the vessel condition being that strong differentiator. What are you seeing in the marketplace at the moment against the backdrop?
Well, I think Morten's right. I mean, I think the important thing is don't buy ships without looking at the condition of them, irrespective of their value or not, because I think comparative cost of doing that is relatively small when you compare to the value of the asset. I think it's a foolish move. We see it. Ships are bought with that, inspections waived and so on, but it's not something that we would necessarily advocate as being a smart move. And I think, the question is, when earnings are high, are we investing in maintenance? And are we really investing in maintenance at that point? Or are we just kind of doing the same things? There's no specific evidence that we see through our data that suggests that in volatile markets that we are necessarily over investing in maintenance. And I think that's something that we should watch quite carefully. As I said at the opening, I think it's about consistency throughout the cycles. And, I think that's a really important point. From our point of view, really important that you check the condition of the ship, that you manage the condition of the ship. I think the proximity of ownership to asset is a very relevant point these days as well. Ownership has changed. The model has changed. There's a lot more outsourced ship management these days than there was 10 years ago. That creates a risk as well. The proximity of your ownership or your financial sponsorship to that asset becomes a really key risk to kind of plug. And we advocate looking at that from a consistent, sort of transparent perspective. So it's sort of, I think it differs on the circumstance that we're talking about. If we're talking about a ship owner on a regular basis investing in maintenance, or if we're talking about a transactional environment, I think the message is still the same. The condition of the ship, the risk of the asset is super important in both of those scenarios and need to be watched closely.
I mean, ship management, third party or second party ship management, as some of the managers like to refer to it, more of a sort of close relationship with the owner. Strangely, they're only managing 20% of the world fleet at the moment, which is interesting, even though there's about 500 or 600 third party, second party ship managers out there. We've got a question in from an anonymous attendee, which is great. I'm going to read it out. Danish Ship Finance highlighted the current market was driven by geopolitics. We know that. Okay. Going forward, they expressed concern about decarbonisation and the impact on shipping demand and distressed assets. How does the panel view that risk for new buildings today? Jakob, let me bring you in on that. Anything to do with risk? I'd like to bring in the insurer.
I think that's what I started out saying. I think the decarbonisation and lack of legal framework may discourage people to invest in new buildings because, you don't know where you are in 5 years. You saw with people installing scrubbers, that was maybe a good business case. It may still be, but then a lot of ports ban the scrubbers later on. So I think that uncertainty is why it's so important to get an international framework. I think shipping is an international world, and a lot of local legislation is not beneficial, I think, for anyone, because it's just going to make it more and more complex to have the ship. So I think the risk there is that due to the lack of course, framework, they'll postpone new buildings, and obviously there'll be more older ships coming up. I'll say an older ship is not necessarily bad. As it's well maintained, it's absolutely fine. I'd say we see maybe more older ships, but from our survey, we see more well maintained ships than we did years back. So maybe that's going back to Morten's point. Maybe because it's a good market, they invest more in it. There's more focus on the quality. But that's the main one, and then obviously decarbonisation. Of course, there's new technologies coming aboard the ships, which needs to be understood. Ammonia is very different from fuel-driven ships or LNG. So all these new risks that comes with a new technology needs to be understood. I think it's be more transitional. At the end of the day, we said in the start, shipping is resilient. We're gone through a lot of transitions voluntarily. We went from sail to steam, from steam to diesel, from diesel to fuel. We'll also, I'm pretty sure, manage this decarbonisation. But as with all new technologies, there will be some risk to start out with, which needs to be taken into account. And of course, we from insurance also need to understand and obviously try to help our members understand as well. But also, we don't want to discourage green transition. We want to encourage innovation as well, because decarbonisation is an industry task we all need to try to assist with, which we try to do without technical knowledge.
Morten, let me bring you in on this. We know what happened with the IMO net zero framework. There's comments in the marketplace that with the situation we're facing at the moment, it's all about drill, baby, drill, get the oil. That's what we need. Hydrocarbons aren't going anywhere. What's the shipbroker's view on all of this?
The shipbroker or the ship owner?
But give us both. Give us both.
I think shipbrokers have been and will continue to be innovative and creating new ideas in the market for new type of ships and car carriers and these heavy lift ships, etc. were created by Norwegian shipbrokers in the old days. So they will continue to be part of that, and they've also been part of the electric type of ferries, which are now going across all the fjords in Norway, for example. How far that can go on across the ocean type of transportation for VLCCs, etc., remains to be seen. But there are thoughts and crazy, inverted commas, ideas about that you can actually, have energy on electric power or electric energy driving the ships around the world. I think it will not be in my time, but still, there are things happening out there. Sales are coming back as part of the whole thing. So, but I think the main road, 80% of the ships will be built with traditional engines and fuel, if you like. But we will continue to go in a more green direction, which is, very, very strong force. Drill, baby, drill. Yes, that will continue to prevail because that's where the money is coming from. And if we like it or not, most of the windmills and everything else relies on products coming from oil. So we can't go away from that, but we can have a transition period. I still think that present, main engines types, etc., will prevail for 85 or 90% of the ships going forward.
I'm going to cover more questions here. There's one from my very good friend Malcolm Willingdale, who I'm going to direct to Nick in a second. I'm going to come on to Robert Hodge from ITIC first. The issue we see at ITIC, the owners are often buying cheap tonnage, then blaming their manager once it becomes costly to bring that ship up to a decent standard. Who would like to comment on that? Jakob or
Yeah, I'm happy to. I think it goes back. I say, as Morten says, that the people with the money and the managers are today often maybe not the same person, and they'll try to blame maybe managers, but again, that's where you work together. As an owner, you need to find a manager you can rely on and secure. And as a manager, you also need to be tough as well. It's it's easy to get business in, but is it really business you want to have? If they don't want to maintain the standard of the ship you want, well, then you need to maybe take the consequences, because end of the day, you are the one with the reputation as well. I can see there's a question about a case last week, which I was mentioning before, which can have huge consequences for the managers. So the managers do. I think shipping today is also more complex. That's also why we see that, there's a big need for managers, because with all this legislation and all that, just running maybe 2-3 ships is maybe not doable anymore. You need a bigger setup like some of them have. And I've visited a lot of managers like Anglo Eastern and others. They have really, really impressive facilities, which I think is really amazing. But as a manager today, you're a bit pushed from other wing, and that's where you have to have a strong business model and ethical considerations as well. As it's the same with insurance. It's easy to get in new tonnage. You can just slash your prices, but is that gonna long term bring any benefits? Probably not. No. And as today, there's just more focus on the quality and bad publicity, etc. And you can also be held liable in various costs for it as well. So yeah, I'll say if they try to blame the manager, then maybe you should have a talk with the owner. Say, is this the owner we really want in our business? That's where you need to do.
And it's good for managers to say no sometimes, and they got reputations, as you say, to uphold as well.
Absolutely.
But Nick, Malcolm's got a question for you, and then I'm going to come on to Keyur in a second. But Nick, is a prolonged period of inactivity for ships trapped in the Middle East Gulf a good or a bad thing for ship condition?
Well, it's probably a question more for the managers, realistically, in terms of how they're maintaining the ship whilst trapped. But it's not a good thing, generally speaking. So I think any period of prolonged inactivity has negative consequences. Ultimately, depends on the nature of that activity. Depends what we're talking about in terms of the time frames and the access to kind of maintenance and spares. I mean, one could argue that it's some opportunity for them to get some routine maintenance tasks completed whilst being sort of relatively idle, notwithstanding the risks of being exposed out on the main decks and so on. But back to the crewing point made earlier as well, we have to be super kind of sensitive to the fact that there's a huge amount of seafarers stuck against their will, without their control, in an environment that they really don't want to be in, and are being exposed or feeling exposed, particularly when you're talking about drone attacks and whatnot, which can be fairly wide-reaching. So I think it's a bad thing overall, to the maintenance of the ship, but more so, I would say, to the environment on board, the crew on board, the situation on board. It's highly kind of dangerous, and look, we've seen it firsthand in our operations. We've had surveyors on board ships in the region that have had to kind of get off the ship fairly promptly. I think we all have a responsibility to not put added pressure onto vessels in that area of the world at the moment as well, triggering inspections that are not necessary, triggering things that are not entirely required whilst they're in the region. I think is something that we need to be maybe a little bit more sensitive to. Whether it's maintenance, whether it's the environment on board, whether it's the risk of the situation being there, it's a wholly negative experience, I think, for everybody.
So those vessels that are in the Gulf at the moment, 3,500 or so, that they're saying, are they in what? Will they be effectively in warm layup or cold layup? How are they dealing with it at the moment?
I don't think so. I think it's more just you're sort of idle waiting, really, in the same way that you would be at anchorage somewhere. You're just sort of idle, you're waiting. I don't think anybody's taking any specific measures from a machinery perspective to preserve any long term. But I think it is a question for the managers, because I don't know what their view is on maintenance protocols whilst they're in region. I don't know what their view is on how long they feel that they're going to be there, and whether or not they feel that they need to start thinking about warm layup. But I don't think we're quite at that point yet. Of course, if it prolongs considerably and we are fully stuck, then absolutely one needs to start thinking about some of that kind of warm layup procedure, some of those protocols, turning over machinery, some of those aspects of kind of warming the ship down a little bit. But you've got a full complement of crew still on board that ship at the moment as well. And I don't think we're quite in the situation yet where we're entering a warm layup. But I think a manager's perspective in this, I mean, we don't have a manager here on the panel, but I think a manager's perspective here would be super interesting as well.
Yeah. Okay. Bringing Keyur in on this. Looking at the current market situation, one thing I wanted just to ask you earlier on, recyclers, you buy a ship to recycle, or you can also trade it for a period of time. How does the current market situation, how does that influence your decision on what to do with that vessel? And what is your strategy at the moment?
Buying vessels for recycling is our core business, of course. But at the same time, if there is an opportunity for a vessel to be traded for a while and the certificates are valid, that is something that we would not preclude from our strategy and perspective. But that is not happening like too often, because already the owners know that the freight rates are good, and owner who's operating a vessel in any particular segment, tanker, bulker, or whatever it is, they can find employment themselves, so they wouldn't come to us. So yeah, but if there is an opportunity, yes, of course we would look at it, and try to employ such vessels. But we don't see that happening too often now, because everybody is finding somebody and the charter rates are doing good. So people don't come to us. We are sort of idle.
Okay. Just really on just message to the attendees. We've got about 6 or 7 minutes left. If you've got any questions, please send them in. Really to the panel, sort of final set of questions here. Really looking forward. Morten, you've got your hand up. You've got a point to say.
Yeah, just a very short comment. I think the large management companies is actually a good thing for the shipping industry, because they have a profile and a reputation to take care of going forward. As it were, when the ship owners had their own management, they didn't have to report to anybody, literally, apart from their own pocket, if the ship was badly managed. Whereas now, these managers managing hundreds of ships, their reputation is at stake if they don't have a high quality level. And I think that's a very good thing for the shipping industry. And that's how, if ship owners are not prepared to pay the price for a good management, well, that ship is going to deteriorate in quality and the market will find out. So I think that's a safety valve.
But as I said earlier, only 20% of the world fleet is managed by third-party managers. And I think the hardest market to crack for the managers has been the Greek market. What needs to change for the situation to improve? Because it's a small amount, really.
Well, it's 20%, and that's it's growing. You go back 20 years, it's probably only 5 or 10%. And there were days when the chaos market went through the roof here in Norway, and big companies like Cosmos, Anders Yara, went and bought 2 Niarchos VLCCs without inspecting, and one of them never operated later. And that was a price they paid for not inspecting a ship and trusting that Niarchos were operating ships at that time at a very high level. So, as was mentioned by Nick before, you have to inspect ships before you buy them. You can't go and do wave inspection unless it's a resale, literally. And that prices you pay for it is huge. And I think we're going to see, hopefully, with the market we have at the moment, with earnings are good, we will have a higher level of maintenance for the ships and the fleet in general. And I hope that is the case.
Yeah, I think a lot of people should go to Nick more often, because even from a recycling perspective, it's one thing to have vessel description that, okay, this vessel is 2004 built or 2006 built, Japan built. It's so many deadweight, GRT, so many hose hatches, or what if it is tankers, then so many tanks and this and that, and it's a bronze propeller and this. So it looks good on paper, but it's only when the vessel ends up on the beach and when the recycler boards that he finds out that what was supposed to be a 20 tank wall is now maybe 4 So unless you get the help of people like Nick, you might end up, the recycler might end up having a lot of wastage, and he might have paid for maybe 10,000 tons and might end up with maybe 9,700.
Yeah. Let me just respond to that. Yeah, thank you very much. I agree. no surprise. But I think not just for the recycler, right? It's the same points across the piece. Defects can be hidden through kind of for utilization through operate. They can. We see an alarming amount of things that we shouldn't see in our inspection programs as we go around. We see some great things as well, just to balance that comment, right? We see some fantastic, well-maintained, really super committed ship owner, ship manager kind of relationships, and sort of to Morten's point, at the higher end of the market for sure, the outsourced, the big players, we see some great things. So it's not a negative story in totality, but we do see some poor practices still today that I don't think we should realistically be seeing at this sort of time and sort of age and maturity of our industry. And I'm that's not pointing fingers in any one specific direction. It's not always age or geographic or ship type related, but we do see it. And I think we need to call that out when we do see it, because I think collectively we can do a lot better.
Okay, brilliant. Well, we got about 2 minutes left. I just have a closing question to all the panelists, if I may. And thank you so much for your time today. It's been brilliant. But if you had to give one piece of advice to ship owners, managers, or stakeholders navigating today's volatile market, what would it be? Let me start with Morten, and then go up and end with Jakob. Morten, what are your thoughts? What bit of advice would you give?
I think you have to be cautious and prudent in your inspection and evaluation of the ships technically. At the end of the line, that's going to come back to you both from the finance, from the charters, from the manager, from the asset value. Quality pays off in the long run. And even if you have to pay 5% more than for a less attractive ship, if you like, it's going to pay off in the long run. So my advice will be, in this market, go for quality and stay with that.
Okay, sound advice. Keyur, what are your thoughts?
No, absolutely. Quality is very important, and also we have to be mindful that the charter rates today may be going over the roof. But like I don't know whether it was Morten or somebody mentioned that people are paying X% over new building prices, right? Today, but how long is that going to last? I mean, are you going to be able to recover your money? When the war ends, you might end up with a big hole in your pocket if you're not careful. And it's very easy to get carried away in the current flow and the sentiment, but one has to be very, very careful in pricing the asset. Today you are getting unless you are able to tie up for a long term, basing on spot market rates and all that, to get excited and put in big money would be very dumb.
Okay, thank you very much, Keyur. And Nick, what are your thoughts on advice to stakeholders navigating today's volatile market?
Well, I would just say be proactive. Don't wait for a claim, or don't wait for a transaction, or don't wait for an event to find out something that you perhaps ought to know about the asset. I think be proactive, be consistent with that proactive approach, and be transparent.
Brilliant. Jakob, from an insurance perspective, cautious, look after the vessel.
Yeah, of course. I can say in this day of age, which obviously where digitalization is talked a lot about, there's a lot of products out there that comes in and say gonna save something. But I can say basically, if you want to mitigate claims, the two things you need is a well-trained crew and a well-maintained ship. That's the best thing, quality, to make sure you don't get any claims. We have high-risk trades with never any claims because it's very niche. The crew know what they're doing. The ship is maintained, cargo holds, etc. So these are the two main things. That's the foundation in every company. It should be, whether you manage in-house or third-party managers, doesn't matter. That is to be the basic. When you have that, then you can build on top with all kind of maybe AI products which use various words, look at CCTVs and all that, which I think have a lot of potential as well. But the foundation needs to be there, and that's the same as it was 50 years ago. Maintenance and a good crew, that's the main thing. And obviously, as Morten said and the others, it's, quality matters. As one thing is, you can maybe save a bit of money, but one big claim, detention, port states, maybe you say, oh, my insurance will pay some of it. But your reputational damage will still be there, and that is very, very difficult to build up again. And I think the focus will be there by certain, due to the recent events going forward, on the quality and the liability surrounding it. So good crew, good maintenance, no difference there. That's the same as been ever, probably.
I mean, it brings back one comment that was made to me many, many years ago when I was on Lloyd's List. And it was a ship owner who'd been involved in an accident. And he said, the question was posed, and what about the increasing cost of training and maintaining your ship and all the rest of it? He said, well, if you think that's expensive, try having an accident. And I think that sort of sums it up quite nicely, really. I'd like to thank the panelists today for your time and for your wisdom and for your counsel and for your comments. Excellent, really, really good debate. Thank you so much indeed for coming along today and making this a really, really special webinar. It's been brilliant. I'd like to also thank the attendees. I'm looking over to them now on the right-hand side of my screen. Thank you very much for your questions. As I said, the webinar has been videotaped and audio taped, so it will be edited down and put onto the SMI website, and we'll be pushing it out onto social media and out to the readers, digital readers of Ship Management International on the daily side as well. Gentlemen, thank you very much indeed again. Appreciate your comments, and I look forward to seeing you very, very soon, maybe in Posidonia or on a golf course, Morten. You never know. We'll see what happens. All right, Jakob, thank you very much indeed.